Hello everybody, welcome to Israel Briefing. I'm Benjamin Anthony, the founder and director of Our Soldiers Speak and co-founder and director of the Miriam Institute. Israel Briefing was an opportunity assigned to me by JBS, Jewish Broadcasting Service, that gives me access to Israelis in the States of Israel and occasion to broadcast those to you at home thereafter. Typically our briefings come from the States of Israel and are conducted in the States of Israel. But today we happen to have a rare treat. I'm joined in studio with a Brigadier General serving and active of the Israel Defense Forces. His name is Amir Ebstein. He's the commander of the Border Defense Array, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to chat with him today. Thank you very much. And Amir, welcome to Israel Briefing. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to begin by just asking you very, very quickly, what exactly does your title mean? You're the commander of the Israel Defense Forces Border Array. Tell us what that is.
So it's a new organization within the Ground Forces Command, and it's charged with the force development of the units and capabilities that have to do with border defense. So we've done border defense for many years, but about 3-4 years ago we decided to make it a little more professional, to specialize in that. So I deal with the special units that do border defense. We try to conduct and take knowledge that there is in the border defense and bring it to all the different commands that we have. So that's kind of what I do. I'm not in any operational duty at this point of commanding forces in the field, but I'll train them, I'll bring technology, and I'll bring concepts and try to put that all together so the territorial commands will actually have a better defense system set up.
So what's the distinction between border defense and operations on the border, or indeed beyond the border? Just define that, if you would.
So what we've discovered in the previous years is that since the battlefield is getting very, very complicated, a lot of new technology, a lot of new challenges coming from our borders and beyond our borders, that we want to have units that specialize in what we call maneuvering, which would mean infantry and armor and artillery that will go beyond the border and attack into enemy terrain. And they're units that will specialize in defending the border. And it's a new concept, and the idea being specializing. We want to specialize or have every force specialize in what they're doing. So that's what we're working on right now. We'll still have units doing, or we'll still have maneuver units doing border defense missions, but we'd like to get better and have more units that just do that.
And which borders are you stationed on right now?
So I have forces stationed on every border, all the way from up north down to Eilat. Some units, like collection units, will be on each border, even if it's potential for heavy fighting, like the border with Hezbollah up north, or the border down south with Hamas. So I'll have these collection battalions who sit there, and they're under the command of the division, and they'll do all the observations. So you've probably seen pictures of either our observation soldiers who sit in the command and control centers and observe the border, or you'll see, or hopefully you won't see, the soldiers that are actually in the border observing from ground level. So those are one type of units that we have. The second type of unit that we have, which is a newer type of unit, are border defense units that do mostly infantry missions, especially on what we call peace borders. So we have 4 of these battalions. They're sitting on the Egyptian border and then the Jordanian border. And what's unique about these battalions is that they're a mixed gender battalion. So they're about 60% women soldiers who are combat soldiers, and about 40% men.
And you're responsible, among other things, for the integration of female soldiers into combat units. Tell us a little bit about the challenges there, because it's not exclusively the integration of women, but also minorities and so on and so forth within the broader Israel Defense Forces.
Right, so one of the interesting things about our units is that they have just about everybody that you find in Israeli society, we have in our units. So we will have, like I said, women who are combat soldiers. We have men. We have quite a lot of commanders that are either Druze or Bedouins. And we even have Muslim soldiers that are fighters. We even had at some point a Muslim woman who wanted to be a fighter. So we kind of have an array of all the different parts of Israeli society. And what's interesting enough is we get them all to work together. So I have company commanders that will be, he could be a Bedouin or a Druze, and he's commanding a company that's 60% women, 40% men from all different parts of Israel, which is fascinating to my opinion.
It is fascinating. Did the Muslim woman who wanted to be a combat soldier end up becoming that?
Yes, she did.
Tell me about that.
So she's in one of our units. She wanted to become a combat soldier. And of course we allow whoever wants to be a combat soldier to join our units. It's interesting to point out that all the women that are in combat positions they have to sign up another 8 months. So
beyond the 2 years of conscripted service.
So conscripted service for women is 2 years, and for men it's 2 years and 8 months. So the women who want to be in combat units have to add those 8 months to be similar to the men in terms of the lengths of their service. So they all volunteer, which is absolutely amazing. We're talking about thousands of women who volunteer every year to be combat soldiers. So going back to your questions, she was a Muslim who wanted to be a combat soldier, and we allowed it. So she's serving today in one of our battalions on the Jordan border.
So this is very interesting to me because this deals with two populations within the states of Israel with different considerations, where the army has different attitudes towards their drafting and enfranchisement. So let's pass that out for a moment. So the first is Muslim citizens of the states of Israel. There's no compulsory draft for them. There's a different attitude towards that. How are they received back in their communities if they draft into the Israel Defense Forces? And why is it controversial if it is within the communities that they hail from?
So I think that's true not only about the Muslims, but we've seen that in the IDF and other parts of population that doesn't serve in mass in the IDF. So we've seen that in the Haredi soldiers that we have. I've had soldiers in previous positions, like when I ran the armor school, Haredim who would go back home, and we'd allow them to actually go back in civilian clothes, because if they would go in uniform, their whole neighborhood would react. So
react favorably or unfavorably?
Unfavorably.
The entire neighborhood would react unfavorably to a returning IDF soldier in uniform from the Haredi community.
Right. So unfortunately, I think within the IDF we'll accept everyone, but not all parts of society still see it that way. So we have a lot of individuals who would like to volunteer, although their surroundings don't or don't back that. And we try to facilitate that. We think it's important, so we'll allow them to do whatever they need. And the way to go ahead, I think, is these little victories. So we're not going to go change all of Israeli society in one day. But the more you get these people to serve, and their friends see them, and their families see them, and they have more understanding, I think the more we'll be able to touch bigger and bigger parts of society.
So this conversation about enfranchising women within the military in the United States has its own dynamic to it. It's a little bit different in the states of Israel. What's the imperative to enfranchise female soldiers into combat units? What's the motivation behind that?
So I think there's two reasons that we've increased dramatically the number of female combatant soldiers. The first reason is that it works. So we started off with one battalion, and we started off with some fighters in the border police. We had pilots, and slowly we realized that it just works. They do the job very well. They're highly motivated. We have very good experience with them. So, if they could do it, why not? Mm-hmm. The second reason is we want more people in combat units. And like I said before, we want some more combat units that specialize in border defense in order to allow the other units to train longer periods of time and to specialize. So altogether, you're looking to have more soldiers. And since we've actually reduced the amount of service that soldiers have to serve from 3 years to 2 years and 8 months, we actually have less soldiers serving than we used to.
Right.
So in order to compensate for all of that, we're really interested in drafting women. So they do the job well. We'd want more soldiers, so it seems like the best solution.
Are there any particular assets or talents or skills that you find more highly represented among the female soldiers than you do among the male soldiers?
Yeah, so I think, at least from our experience, and this is in science, but I think as a large, the women fighters they concentrate better. Some of them are better, they hit with bullets better than men do. So they're
more precise.
More precise.
Really?
Yeah, they have a higher concentration. Again, I'm giving you the large picture.
But they make more precise marksmen?
A lot of them do. And their ability to concentrate and be patient. We see that in a lot of the reconnaissance unit that I have. They have more patience than men, which isn't a great surprise. But the trick is, and that's what we're trying to do, is kind of fit out the units and the way they're built to the challenges. So you might want to have a unit that's mixed to do some combat action. You'd want to have men to carry the heavier stuff, women to do something else. So we're kind of learning this because we have so many now, and we're learning how to do it. And it's a mass scale. It's not a small amount. We're not looking into one pilot or one soldier in an outfit of men. We're looking in big numbers.
Can you give us some of those numbers?
Like I said, I think we're well over a few thousand now in the IDF a whole. They're not all in the ground forces, but we have fighters right now, women fighters in the border defense array. We have it in the artillery units. We have it in the Iron Dome units, the ones who do the missile defense. We're even starting to incorporate them in the Navy, in the new Navy ships that we're building, and of course Air Force pilots, which we have good experience from the late 90s.
So last question about that, when you make mention of Air Force pilots, the precedent came from a female soldier who petitioned the Supreme Court, I believe. Can you tell people about that?
So I think it was 1995, Alice Miller wanted to join the Air Force pilot course, and she wasn't allowed to. We denied it because we said we don't see...
We is who?
We is the IDF.
Okay.
So the IDF said that it doesn't see women in that position and that it's not worthwhile in terms of numbers to do that. And the Supreme Court came out with a verdict saying that the IDF has to incorporate women as pilots. And ever since, I think that was a good wake-up call for us in the IDF. And ever since, we're just using this potential as much as we can. So today, over 92% of the jobs in the IDF are open for women. There's only a few units that we still haven't opened for women. Mostly infantry and armor units. That I think we still have a long way and a lot of thinking to do before we could actually do that. We need a little more experience before we make any decisions about that.
And that comes down to the shared living within the tank, for example, that complicates issues.
It's a few questions. It's physical abilities, the ability to actually, again, live together in the same very small area for extended period of times. So in border defense, you see that less. But if you're going to go into a maneuver into enemy territories, it's an extended period of time. So it's things that we have to look into in a very professional manner. What we could do, what we can't do, and according to that, make decisions. But these are things that are this thinking is going on, and we'll see what will be decided, I think, in a few years.
But this assessment and ultimately the decision is separate to political considerations with the IDF. This is not a political consideration. This is a consideration based on placement, talent, ability, and requirements. Is that right? Right.
The IDF doesn't run political agendas for any side. The only agenda that we have is to try to create a people's army where everybody could serve. And the way we look at it is what is professionally effective, what will create more security to the State of Israel, how to use everybody's talent in the right way, and how to allow everybody to serve. Because we think, first of all, it's important that everybody serves. It's important both for the security and also for Israeli society, because once you bring in more groups that haven't served in the past, I think it makes Israeli society stronger.
So last question about that, and then I'll do a quick pivot to some of the broader considerations that we have. You talk about everybody serving. So one of the groups that is definitely part of the political discourse and the social discourse is the drafting of the Haredim, the orthodox of the State of Israel, into the military. Now, as we try to see a higher incidence of those soldiers, you're also seeking a higher incidence of female soldiers, and the two do not gel or go together within the same unit, even sometimes within the same brigade. How do you manage that conflict or that social challenge as you try to enfranchise both of these groups?
Right. So that's a great question, and that's a great challenge. And similar to Israeli society, which is always a great challenge to try to mold everybody together, what we're trying to do in the IDF is allow everybody to serve and to feel good about their service. We don't want anybody going into the army and feeling like they have to compromise.
Right.
Now, it's not easy to do. Like you said, you can't put women who want to be in combat positions together with Haredim in the same unit. It just won't work. So we have an array of ideas on how to do it, but I think the most important part is just knowing that we're going to try to make it work. So once you decide you're going to make it work, and you use a lot of common sense on the ground and try to disconnect the political talk that there is in society, which tends to be very polarized, and you go down to the ground level where it's soldiers care about the units, they want to do a good job. So you find a lot of good solutions. So we'll have units, and we've worked with these units for a few years now that are only for Haredim. We have a battalion like that. We have a few companies in the infantry brigades that are only for Haredim. We have a program in the Air Force, in the intelligence branch. So we have programs that will fit the Haredim so they will feel comfortable enough to join the army. They won't have to feel that they're giving up on some of their beliefs. On the other hand, we'll have units like I have, which allow women to serve in an equal manner, and they won't feel that someone's clouding, their ability to go ahead in the army.
Right.
So it's something that we're really trying to work together, and I think, as usual, if the IDF takes point on connecting parts of society, this will probably help all of the Israeli society at large.
So now to shift gears and focus for a little while, for a couple of minutes at least, you've spoken about peaceful borders. I assume you're referring to borders that belong to countries with whom the State of Israel has peace accords. So you mentioned Jordan, you mentioned Egypt, as opposed to borders where nothing's going on there, which is completely different. But then you've got the northern borders, in particular Syria, Lebanon. What keeps you up at night in the context of those borders?
So, I think if we had to say it in one word, it would probably be Iran. Iran is a big concern to the State of Israel. It's not only their hatred towards Israel, but it's also their attempts and military attempts to bring the battle to Israel. And we've seen that in the last 2-3 years. We've seen direct attack from Iranian forces in the Golan Heights on Israel. They've fired missiles, or their proxies have fired missiles. They've tried to send drones, killer drones, into the Golan Heights. We shot down a UAV that they sent. So it's their active attempt to create more friction with Israel, to bring the battle to our borders, either on the Golan Heights or in Lebanon through Hezbollah, which is something that we're worried about. And this is something that most of the Middle East is worried about. The Iranian really pretty violent efforts to be very dominant in the region. And this worries everybody. We saw the attack on the Saudi oil fields, and this is what they're doing. And they have put a lot of money into these efforts, into moving their forces or their proxies into Syria. They're backing Hezbollah in Lebanon with a lot of money, and they're even backing the Islamic Jihad in Gaza. So we see it as a very strong effort by the Iranian side to bring the fight to us. So in order to counter that, we're doing a lot of things, all the way from diplomacy and a lot of talks that we have with our good ally, of course, the United States, and the countries in the region and around the region. And when that doesn't help, we do what we need to do to defend the state of Israel. And of course, I won't go into everything that we do, but I think we're putting up a pretty strong fight, probably one of the strongest in the world, against the Iranian attempt to dominate. And some of the things have gone public. But if the Iranians send their proxies to fire at Israel, then we'll go in and we'll damage their infrastructure and we'll take out whatever we need to do.
Could you spend just 1 minute talking about the technological advent that they are the beneficiaries of? Because the IDF is known to be a very technologically advanced military, but many of the game changers in technology, whether it comes to precision-guided munitions, rockets, missiles, listening devices, drones, these are things that can be procured over the internet and are actually used with a military, or I would say a terrorist focus by these proxies on the borders of the State of Israel. How much are they part of your considerations now within the IDF?
I think it's a large part of what we deal with. This is a challenge that's come up in the last few years. And what's happened is that technologies that once used to be dominated by the military, for many years the military was the head lead on all new technologies. And in the last decade or two, civilian technologies have taken the head. So you could buy today on the internet or off the shelves a wide range of capabilities that in previous years were only superpowers. For example, you could buy a drone, put a munition on it. We've seen this happen with Hamas in Gaza.
Yes.
And it's basically a very precise weapon that could drop a hand grenade or any other munition on a soldier's head or on a tank. So when you take this wide range of technologies and you put it in the hand of these terrorist armies, it becomes a great challenge. And we've seen that a lot happen in the last few years. We've seen drones, we've seen the use of cyber attacks, which is interesting, by all our adversaries. They realize that we're a very technological country and that that's a vulnerability that they'd like to use. So we see that all the time, and one of our challenges, and I think we're doing a pretty good job at it, is keeping ahead. So it's not easy because things are constantly changing.
But the edge is still Israel's.
Yes, no doubt. The edge is still with us, but you're in a constant, what we call a learning fight. So you're constantly trying to outsmart your opponent. And the more technologies that are outside, the harder it gets. So we're working pretty hard on that. I think we have a lot of advantages over the other side, but it's something that keeps us up at night.
So I wish I had more time with you. I would like to close with just a little bit of context. You've been here and you've spoken through our organization to the Harvard Kennedy School students. You've spoken at Harvard Law School. You spoke to the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy. You're going to be briefing the United States Congress on Thursday lunchtime of this week. And you've really had a wonderful experience here in the United States. We're grateful to you for your presence here. But you've been giving strategic briefings and tactical briefings. I'd like to give a bit of a human briefing. So you've told us what keeps you up at night. Tell us a little bit about why those who hold Israel dear to her heart can sleep easy at night. What can we be optimistic and sure of?
So I'll start with just the soldiers that we get. A week ago I was in what we call the Bakum, where we enlist new soldiers.
I remember it very well.
Right. So I think most Israelis remember that day. And I was observing our enlistment of young women. And there's hundreds of young women who volunteered to become combat soldiers. So, with all the talk that we have about, these millennials and these children that just look in the internet all day long or on their smartphones. I mean, we're talking about thousands of Israelis every year joining the army with a lot of talent and a lot of motivation. So I think, technology is important, everything's important, but just these wonderful children, it's great to work with. And the other thing I'd like to point out that makes me very optimistic, and I've seen this in the past week that I spent here in the States, but also in previous visits and when we have visits from people from the US and Israel. I think the close relationship that we have with Jews around the world, and especially in the US, is something that is really to be proud of and gives us a lot of strength. Now, not only, on the physical level, but also knowing that, we're not alone in the world. There's people there or Jews there that are really backing us. It doesn't only warm the heart, it gives you a lot of confidence. Even when you're in the IDF and you're in a very strong army, you need that backing and support.
Well, as I said, I wish that we had more time. I very much appreciate everything. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for everything that you do. You're a general, you're a Jew, you're a defender of the states of Israel. We're grateful, and most impressively, you only arrived here in the United States on Saturday night and you already speak like an American. So that is testament to your capabilities and your learning faculties. We're very proud and honored. Thank you. Go from strength to strength. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much indeed for watching this episode of Israel Briefing. I'm Benjamin Anthony, founder and director of Our Soldiers Speak, co-founder of the Miriam Institute, and I'm deeply appreciative to JBS for the opportunity to bring you this exclusive conversation with Brigadier General Amir Ebstein, a senior-ranked active uniformed officer of the Israel Defense Forces. I look forward to the next episode of Israel Briefing.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. And we're especially pleased to remind you that thanks to a generous matching gift from the Cayley family, every new or increased dollar you donate to JBS will be worth double to JBS. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.